The flames had long died, but the ground still smoldered. Jesse Rourke pulled his duster tighter against the cold wind as he urged his horse up the ridge. The air smelled of ash and sorrow. In the distance, wisps of smoke curled skyward like ghost fingers clinging to a memory they couldn't let go of. He hadn't meant to ride this way. The canyon trail was quicker, safer, but something had drawn him up the pass. Something about the way the wind carried that faint copper scent, blood. The wagon had burned clean to its iron bones. Charred timber crunched beneath Jesse's boots as he dismounted. Around him, the towering red rocks stood silent like sentinels of judgment. Then he heard it. A cough, soft, ragged. He spun toward the sound hand, resting lightly on the grip of his revolver. Underneath what was left of the wagon canopy, a bent frame of iron ribs. Something moved. Jesse crouched, and there it was. A boy, no older than 12 or 13. Skin, sun-dark hair tangled with ash and sweat. His shirt was torn, revealing a shoulder marked not by wounds but by ink. A tribal brand faded but clear. Kiowa. The boy clutched a bundle to his chest, his eyes wide, feral, bloodshot. Not with fear, but with something deeper, something old. Jesse raised both hands slowly. "Easy, kid," he said, voice calm. "Ain't here to hurt you." The boy didn't answer, just coughed again, harder. Jesse saw the red spray on his lips. Smoke inhalation, maybe, or fear. Then the boy held out the bundle. No, a letter stained with soot and dried blood. His fingers trembled as he pushed it forward like handing Jesse a burning coal. "Please," the boy croaked, barely audible. "Don't let them take it." Jesse hesitated. Not because of the boy, but because of the seal on the envelope. Military wax, U.S. Cavalry. His hand closed around it. And just like that, he was back there 7 years earlier. That night in Red Ridge. The flames, the screaming, the women and children running through the brush. And his own hand trembling not from guilt, but from knowing he was being paid not to ask questions. The boy's head lolled. He collapsed into Jesse's arms unconscious. Jesse looked around. No sign of riders. No fresh tracks. Whoever had done this had either died in the blaze or was riding back to town to rewrite the story. He wrapped the boy in his own coat, tied the letter to his saddlebag, and whistled for his horse. "Let's go, Dusty," he muttered. "Looks like we're back in the saving business." 20 minutes later, Jesse reached the old dynamite shack hidden in a gulch halfway down the ridge. No one came here anymore, not since the mine dried up. He laid the boy gently on the cot, lit a lantern, and examined the wounds. Superficial burns. Smoke in the lungs. No broken bones. Nothing fatal. Then he turned back to the letter. He read it once, then again. Each word cut deeper than the last. "To whom it may concern, I, Captain Elroy Halberd, confess my participation in the Red Ridge Initiative, authorized by Sheriff Stroud, and in collusion with Carver Mining Company, resulting in the unlawful killing of 23 Kiowa non-combatants." Jesse exhaled, slow, measured. The wind howled outside, brushing dust across the cracked floorboards. He looked down at the boy, a Kiowa child clutching truth in a land that had long forgotten what it looked like. Then something clinked outside. Jesse froze. He moved to the door, lifted his rifle, and peeked through the slit in the boards. Nothing but dust and twilight. Still, he didn't sleep that night. He watched over the boy lantern, burning low letter hidden in his boot. The boy stirred once, whispered something in Kiowa. A name. Isobel. Jesse stiffened. That name. He hadn't heard it in years, but he remembered her. A woman with storm-dark eyes and a voice like wind in tall grass. A woman who had once begged him to carry a message across enemy lines. A woman he'd turned away from, too afraid, too tired, too selfish. Isobel Rainwater, this boy's mother. The truth rolled over him like thunder across dry land. He hadn't just found a boy. He'd found a ghost, a reckoning. The storm rolled in with a silence that made the desert nervous. Jesse Rourke leaned against the splintered doorway of the old dynamite shack, watching low clouds creep over Red Ridge. The boy still slept inside his chest, rising shallow but steady. The lantern light flickered across the boy's bruised cheek, making shadows dance like restless ghosts. The letter was folded tight in Jesse's coat pocket, its weight heavier than it should have been. He'd read it twice more since dawn, hoping some detail would change, hoping the words would make more sense the third time around. But they didn't. Confession, massacre, cover-up, names. Sheriff Malden Stroud, Captain Elroy Halberd, and someone named Isobel Rainwater. Jesse closed his eyes. He remembered her now, Isobel, those high cheekbones, the way she'd looked at him back then, with something that wasn't quite trust. The woman who'd approached him the night before Red Ridge burned. She'd asked him to carry a message. He hadn't, and when the gunshots rang out at dawn, Jesse had ridden the other way. Now here was her boy lying in a shack Jesse hadn't seen in years, clutching the truth like it might save him. "Goddamn ghosts," Jesse muttered. Inside, the boy stirred. Jesse stepped in boots heavy on the wood. The boy blinked slowly, his eyes bloodshot and hollow. "You're safe," Jesse said, voice low. The boy tried to sit up. Winced. Failed. "Where am I?" "Off the trail," Jesse said. "That's all you need to know." The boy's gaze drifted to Jesse's coat pocket. "The letter? I've got it." Jesse crouched beside the cot. "You want to tell me why men died for this thing?" The boy's throat worked hard before any sound came. "My mother kept it hidden. Said it proved what happened to our people. Said if it ever got to the newspaper men in Denver, the truth would come out." "What truth?" "That it wasn't a war." His voice cracked. "It was murder, and they made it look like a fight." Jesse swallowed hard. The storm outside whispered along the ridgeline like it knew what he'd done. "I saw it too," Jesse said, almost to himself. "I saw the aftermath, the burned teepees, the children. Hell, I helped build some of the barricades they used to pin your people in." The boy stared at him, unmoving. "Then why didn't you stop it?" The words hit like a slap. Jesse stood. "I didn't know what I was walking into." "That's not the same as doing nothing." The boy's voice had gone flat, like someone too young to be that tired. Jesse paced the room once, twice. The old floorboards creaked beneath him like bones. "What's your name, kid?" "Micah." "You got a last name?" "I don't know," the boy said, eyes glassy. "My mother called me Micah. That's all I remember." Jesse looked away. "Well, Micah, you've got the whole goddamn frontier after you. That fire back there. Someone wanted you dead. And they'll want that letter even more." Micah didn't flinch. "I have to get it to Denver." "You're a boy. You won't make it 3 miles. "Then you take it," Micah said. "You're the one with the horse and the gun." Jesse stared at him, expecting fear. But what he saw in the boy's eyes wasn't fear at all. It was conviction. A look Jesse hadn't seen since he buried his own brother in the war between the states. Outside, thunder cracked sharp and sudden. "We ride at nightfall," Jesse said. "But if we're going to do this, we'll need help." "From who?" Jesse narrowed his eyes. "Someone who hates Sheriff Stroud even more than I do." That someone was Deputy Alan Pritchard, a drunk, a gambler, and a man who'd once buried his own sister after Stroud's men mistook her for a Kiowa during a sweep. Jesse found him in the back room of the Dusty Trail saloon, bottle in one hand, regret in the other. "You owe me nothing," Jesse said. "But if you still believe in right and wrong, I need a distraction tonight." Alan blinked. "Distraction from what?" "From getting this kid out of town alive." Alan scoffed. "A kid? He's carrying something that'll burn Stroud's whole world to ash." "Then you're already dead," Alan said. "But hell, Jesse, I've been dead inside for years." They shook hands like men with nothing left to lose. Back at the shack, Micah sat on the cot, a rifle across his lap. His hands trembled, but his eyes were steady. Jesse saddled Dusty and handed Micah a bedroll. "You stay close. You keep quiet. We ride fast, we ride hard, and we trust no one." Micah nodded. "Except each other," Jesse added. Micah looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. "You're not like the others," he said. Jesse shrugged. "I used to be." The wind picked up as the sun died behind the ridge. 2 riders, one haunted, one hunted, slipped into the night with a letter in a saddlebag and every sin of Red Ridge on their trail. They didn't know if they'd make it to Denver. They didn't even know if they'd see another sunrise. But they rode, because sometimes one boy's truth and one cowboy's guilt was all it took to challenge a world built on lies. The moon was a sickle half swallowed by clouds hanging low over the ridgeline like a warning. Jesse Rourke crouched low behind a sandstone outcrop, peering into the darkness below. The desert lay still, but his instincts itched. Too still. Somewhere out there, hidden in the folds of the land, men waited. Behind him, Micah shifted in the saddle, clutching the rifle Jesse had given him. His face was pale, but focused. "You remember the route," Jesse whispered. Micah nodded. "Through Devil's Notch, cut north behind the dry creek. Denver's still 2 days if we ride hard." Jesse checked his revolver, fully loaded. "Don't shoot unless I say," Jesse murmured, "or unless you want to die loud." Micah's voice was steady. "I'm not scared of dying." Jesse looked back at him. "I'm scared of you dying, kid." And then they rode. Hooves soft on the hard, packed dirt, every breath held like it might betray them. The night wrapped around them like smoke, but the ambush came faster than thunder. A crack split the stillness. Dust erupted at Jesse's feet. Then another shot, this time closer. Horses reared. "Go!" Jesse roared, spurring Dusty forward, forcing Micah to follow. Bullets whined past like wasps. the canyon narrowed walls closing in, funneling them toward Devil's Notch, a jagged pass of black stone and rust-colored sand. And standing dead center in the narrow gorge, Sheriff Malden Stroud, his silhouette framed by the firelight of a nearby camp coat open badge glinting. Behind him, 4 deputies' rifles raised, and in Stroud's hand, a Sharp's buffalo rifle cocked and pointed straight at Jesse's chest. Jesse reined in hard, raising a hand. Micah pulled up beside him. Stroud's voice echoed off the rocks, low and bitter. "Told you years ago, Rourke. You stick your nose in Kiowa business, it'll get chopped off." Jesse didn't flinch. "This ain't Kiowa business anymore, Malden. It's murder, and it's coming back to bite you." Stroud spat. "You think some half-breed boy and a washed-up gun runner can stop what's already been buried?" Micah stepped forward before Jesse could stop him. "My mother wasn't buried. She was burned alive." The air changed. Even the deputies shifted. Stroud's smile faltered. "I was there," Micah said, voice cracking but clear. "I saw you give the order." Stroud lifted the rifle a little higher. "Should have died in that fire with the rest of them." And then the world exploded. Pritchard's shot came from the rocks above, clean and true, knocking the rifle clean from Stroud's grip. The echo hadn't finished ringing before Jesse drew and fired twice, dropping one deputy, winging another. "Micah, go," Jesse yelled. The boy hesitated only a second, then kicked his horse and bolted through the notch. Jesse dove behind a boulder as bullets screamed overhead. Sparks lit the stones. The smell of black powder filled the air. Stroud scrambled for cover, cursing, blood streaming from a graze on his temple. Jesse slid a fresh round into his revolver and shouted toward the rocks. "Pritchard, how many?" The deputy's voice came breathless from above. 4 more back by the fire. 2 flanking left. Jesse cursed. "Too many." "Story of your life, cowboy," Pritchard called back. Another bullet cracked a rock inches from Jesse's head. He peeked out, saw Stroud sprinting for cover, saw Micah disappear over the far ridge, moonlight catching his horse like silver fire. He'd made it through. Now Jesse just had to survive long enough for it to matter. He darted from cover, pistol barking twice. One of Stroud's men went down screaming. Another dropped his rifle and ran into the dark. Stroud ducked behind a horse carcass, pistol raised. "You think this changes anything?" he shouted. "That letter won't reach Denver. Even if it does, nobody cares what happened to some dirty savages." Jesse reloaded in silence. Then he stepped out, face to face. 10 feet between them. 2 men, 1 moment. "You murdered women," Malden Jesse said, voice low. "You lit a fire and thought it'd never come back around." Stroud sneered. "You lit it with me, Rourke. Don't pretend your hands are clean." "I know they're not," Jesse said. He dropped his gun belt in the dust. "But I'm not going to let you kill another kid to keep him dirty." Stroud hesitated. Then he laughed and raised his gun. And that's when Micah's voice rang out from the ridge above. "Drop it." Stroud turned. The boy stood tall, rifle aimed steady, blood streaked across his cheek, but his hands still. "I'm not running anymore," Micah said. Stroud blinked. A beat, and then he dropped the gun. Dust swirled in silence. Micah exhaled. Jesse bent to retrieve his pistol. Pritchard came down from the ridge, gun drawn, face pale but smiling. "Well," he muttered, "that went better than expected." The fire burned low now. The surviving deputies were bound. Pritchard had taken Stroud's badge, his rifle, and every shred of authority the man ever had. Jesse and Micah stood alone at the edge of the cliff. Below them, the path to Denver opened like a promise. "You could have run," Jesse said. "Why'd you come back?" Micah looked at him. "Because if I didn't face him, I'd never be free." Jesse nodded slowly. "Then let's go make sure no one forgets what he tried to bury." They mounted their horses and rode into the wind, not to escape it, but to carry it forward. The wind carried the scent of rain and distant smoke. Jesse Rourke stood beside Micah at the edge of the city, overlooking the muddy streets and the rising spires of newspapers, banks, and government buildings. It wasn't much of a city yet, but it was loud, alive, and crawling with people who wore suits like armor and shook hands like deals. Micah's fingers clenched the leather pouch holding the letter. "You sure they'll listen?" he asked, his voice tight. Jesse looked down the road where wagons rattled past, where people hurried beneath gray skies and promises no one believed. "They'll listen," Jesse said. "They just might not want to hear it." Micah nodded. "Then we make 'em." Inside the Denver Register, the editor's office stank of ink, cigars, and ego. Mr. Edgar Talcott, the editor-in-chief, looked up from his desk with a scowl as Jesse dropped the blood-stained envelope on the table. "What the hell is this?" "Testimony," Jesse said. "A confession from Captain Halberd. Names, dates. How your precious Sheriff Stroud and the Carver Mining Company slaughtered 23 Kiowa and made it look like a war." Talcott arched a brow. "You expect me to publish this?" Micah stepped forward, eyes blazing. "You damn well better." Talcott leaned back, lacing his fingers. "Do you have any idea what you're asking? We print this. We take on the army. The territory. Hell, half our advertisers have interests in Carver Mining. Then burn your paper down and build it back with truth, Jesse said. Talcott studied him, then the boy. Then the letter. He cracked the seal. Minutes passed. When he finally looked up, the color had drained from his face. Where did you get this? From a man who died trying to confess, Jesse said. And from a woman who died waiting to be heard. By dusk, the town square was full. Rain had begun to fall, not hard, just enough to soak collars and blur ink. But people stayed. A special edition of the Register had hit the street's front page, bold as judgment, the Red Ridge letter. Micah stood atop the wooden steps of the city courthouse, the letter in one hand, his mother's scarf tied around his arm. Jesse stood beside him. So did Deputy Pritchard, now stripped of badge but standing tall. Reporters, settlers, veterans. Even 2 Kiowa elders had arrived, traveling all the way from the edge of the territory. And across the crowd, behind a row of nervous militia, stood a representative of the governor himself. Commissioner Elias Byrne, face pale suit immaculate, flanked by 2 cavalrymen. Micah raised the letter. My name is Micah Rainwater, he said, voice cracking slightly but rising strong. And this letter is the truth. A hush fell. 7 years ago, my people were told to come to Red Ridge for peace. Instead, they were ambushed, killed, burned. My mother was one of them. My father was a white man who never claimed me. I survived. This letter, written by one of the officers who took part, proves it was no accident, no battle, just murder. For years we were called savages, monsters. But the monsters wore badges. They smiled while they burned children. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jesse could feel it like wind before a storm. Micah's voice rose. We are not here for vengeance. We are here for remembrance and for justice. He handed the letter to Talcott, who stepped forward to read excerpts aloud, details, dates, signatures. Jesse scanned the faces in the crowd. Shocked settlers, solemn soldiers, some looking away, others wiping their eyes. He saw at a crack in the story they'd all been fed. Byrne stepped forward. This is a serious accusation. 1 letter, 1 boy's word. Micah cut him off. Then arrest me for telling the truth. The challenge hung like lightning in the air. Byrne swallowed hard. No, Jesse said, stepping forward. Arrest me. I was there. I saw the aftermath. I buried some of the dead myself, and I kept quiet. But not anymore. Pritchard added, I was a deputy under Stroud. I saw him cover it up. Ordered men to torch evidence. One by one, people stepped forward. An old nurse, a blacksmith, a scout, all with pieces of the puzzle. Voices once isolated, now aligned. The square erupted. Some clapped. Others wept. The militia stood frozen, unsure where orders ended and truth began. Byrne paled. You'll regret this. No, Jesse said. We already do. That night, the flames in the town square weren't from war. They were from the burning of the Carver Mining contract, stacked and torched by the courthouse steps. The Kiowa elders watched in silence, then turned and walked into the rain heads high. Micah sat beside Jesse on the courthouse porch, feet bare, exhausted. You think it mattered? He asked. Jesse looked at the last embers of the fire. It mattered to them. Micah pulled out something from his pouch, his mother's pendant singed but intact. She wanted me to carry this, said it would remind me who I am. Jesse looked at it. And who's that? Micah smiled, faint and real. The boy who told the story. Jesse nodded. Then let me tell you mine someday. Micah looked up. Why not now? Jesse leaned back, tipping his hat forward. Because it's still being written. The wind smelled of cedar and wet earth. Jesse Rourke sat still in the saddle, watching from a ridge as a long line of riders moved slowly across the valley below. At the front rode 2 Kiowa elders draped in woven blankets, their expressions unreadable. Behind them rode women, children, and warriors. And near the center, his hat low, his posture proud, despite the bruises on his face, Micah Rainwater. He was going home. Jesse didn't wave, didn't call out, just watched as the caravan moved toward the tree-covered hills where the Kiowa were rebuilding not just homes but memory, honor, truth. He could have followed. Micah had asked him to. Come with us, the boy had said. They'd accept you. I would. But Jesse had shaken his head. I rode too far in the wrong direction. You're the one heading the right way. Back in the Kiowa, campfires crackled softly beneath the dusk. Micah stood before the chief, an old man with deep eyes and a voice like gravel. His father's people had not known if the boy was still alive. Now they welcomed him not as a survivor but as a messenger, a symbol that truth could return from the dead. After a long ceremonial silence, the chief spoke. Your mother sang songs for your return. Even as the ashes cooled, she believed you would carry her voice. Micah swallowed. I tried. You did more, the chief replied. You reminded the wind how to tell the truth. Then he gestured, and 2 warriors approached holding something wrapped in black cloth. They unwrapped it carefully, a war lance aged and worn, its wood dark with age, its feathers faded but intact. "This belonged to your grandfather," the chief said. "It has never been held by a child. But you are no longer a child." Micah accepted it with trembling hands. 3 days later, Jesse was preparing to leave Denver. The letter had done its work. Carver Mining was under investigation. Sheriff Stroud and his remaining men were in federal custody, and the register was still printing truth like it was fire. Jesse packed light. He had no home to return to, no one waiting, just the trail. As he saddled his horse, a voice called out, "Mr. Rourke." He turned to see Micah, dust on his boots, eyes gleaming. Jesse blinked. "Didn't expect to see you again." "I asked to come," Micah said. The elders agreed. "For what?" Micah pulled something from under his coat, a wrapped bundle. "I have something for you." Jesse took it, unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a Kiowa bone whistle carved with tiny symbols bound in leather and sinew, and tied to it a strip of red cloth from Isobel Rainwater's dress. "I don't understand," Jesse whispered. "She asked me to find someone who would carry the wind," Micah said. "Not fight it, not run from it, just carry it." Jesse stared at the whistle. "I'm no warrior," he said. Micah shook his head. "You're a rider, and sometimes that's more dangerous." That night, Jesse camped alone under a sky too wide to measure. He lit a small fire, rolled a cigarette, let the silence fall thick. Then he pulled a torn piece of paper from his saddlebag, the same one he'd ignored for years, a letter he had never finished. He stared at it a long while, and then for the first time he began to write. "To whoever finds this, my name is Jesse Rourke. I've been many things: a scout, a coward, a liar, and once or twice something close to a man. I watched a village burn and did nothing. Years later I gave a boy some water and it burned my soul clean. If you're reading this, maybe the world still has room for people who learn too late. Maybe the ride never ends, but if it must, let it end with the truth in your hand. Tell them about Red Ridge. Tell them about the boy who didn't run, and about the man who stayed behind." He folded it, tied it with a string, placed it under a stone near the fire, and when the wind rose, he blew the Kiowa whistle softly, a sound like mourning and mercy combined. Epilogue. They said later that Jesse Rourke disappeared into the southern plains somewhere near the Comanche border. Some said he died in a gunfight. Others claimed he joined a caravan of freedmen and taught children how to ride. But those who knew the truth, the Kiowa, the Denver Register, the boy with the war lance, they knew Jesse didn't vanish. He chose to ride where no one else would. And in the story of Red Ridge, he became not the hero, not the outlaw, but the rider who stayed behind so the truth could ride forward. In a land carved by silence and scorched by secrets, one boy carried a truth the world wanted buried, and one cowboy gave up everything to make sure it was heard. The last letter from Red Ridge wasn't just a story about the Old West. It was about guilt redemption, and how a single act of compassion can spark a fire no bullet can ever kill. Jesse Rourke didn't ride off into legend with a gun in his hand. He stayed behind so the truth could ride forward. And sometimes that's how history changes, not with thunder, but with a whisper carried by the wind. If this story moved you even a little, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Because in the next story, a man walks into a saloon carrying a bullet with his own name on it. And what happens after? You'll have to click the next video to find out. Click here, partner. The trail ain't over yet.